Get ready to cozy up with 6 amazing soups, each one warm, hearty, and packed full of flavor. From the creamy classics to comforting favorites, there's something for everyone. Let's get started. It's cold outside, which means it's time for another soup recipe. We're making ham and potato corn chowder. This soup is loaded with all things delicious. A list of ingredients and detailed directions are posted down in the video's description box for your convenience. Grab your favorite soup pot, let's get started. To a big pot on the stove, or in my case, I'm using my Dutch oven. We're gonna start by cooking up some bacon. This, of course, is optional. The bacon is not an ingredient in the soup, more like just an added topping to the final product. If you're not planning to cook up any bacon, you're going to want to toss in and melt 3 tablespoons of salted butter. If you are planning on cooking up some bacon, leave the bacon grease behind. We're going to use that to cook our veggies in. Speaking of vegetables, we need 4 carrots diced into small cubes. Simply cut your carrots lengthwise and then into small bite-sized pieces. We're going to do the same thing with 4 sticks of celery. Since there's so many items in this soup, everything wants to be small and bite-sized. So a little bit of everything fits on the spoon when we're ready to dig in. This isn't like a classic hearty stew where big chunks of beef or potatoes make up the bulk of each bite. We want a little bit of everything to fit on our spoon. We're also going to dice up 1 white onion. Keep in mind all of our veggies are going to shrink just a little bit during the cooking process, so don't make them too tiny. Once you have all of your vegetables diced, carefully toss them into your pot on the stove over medium-high heat, which should still have that leftover bacon grease in it or 3 tablespoons of melted salted butter from earlier. As a side note, I'm using a 7-quart cast iron Dutch oven. If by some chance you think you don't have nearly enough bacon grease in your pot, you can of course add in more salted butter. You're definitely not going to hurt anything by adding in more butter. Give that a quick stir. We're going to let the veggies cook until they're tender, about 8 to 10 minutes depending on the size of the vegetables. While that's cooking, we need 2 to 4 garlic cloves chopped. Check in on your vegetables before adding in your garlic to the pot, as garlic doesn't take nearly as long to cook once added in. Once everything looks tender, we're going to add in our garlic, followed by our seasonings. We need 2 teaspoons of thyme, 1 teaspoon of black pepper, and start with 1 teaspoon of salt. I would highly suggest adjusting the amount of seasonings according to your tastes. Some people like a lot of seasonings, others maybe not so much. I would suggest starting out with these measurements, and if you think you need more of anything, just add a little bit more. Next, we need 1/2 cup of all-purpose flour. We're going to mix this in completely, and before we add in our liquids, we're going to cook out the raw flour taste, and that should only take about 2 to 3 minutes. Next goes in all of our liquids. We need 4 cups of chicken broth, 2 cups of heavy cream, and 2 cups of milk. I'm using 2% because that's what's in my fridge, but whole milk is perfectly fine. Mix all of that in real quick. For our potatoes, we need 3 pounds of russet potatoes, diced. I've pre-diced my potatoes, so y'all don't have to watch my sketchy knife skills or lack thereof. Into the pot they go. We're gonna bring this up to a boil, then reduce the heat and let everything simmer until the potatoes are tender. This might take anywhere from 10 to 12 minutes. While that's cooking, let's move on to the ham. I picked this up from Walmart. They call it a boneless ham steak. We need roughly 16 ounces of cubed ham. 2 packages should be more than enough. We're going to take our ham and slice it up into bite-sized pieces just like everything else. We of course want it to fit nicely on our spoon without hogging all the real estate. Once our soup has started to boil, we're going to add in our last few remaining ingredients. Dump in 1 full can of yellow corn, liquids included, and add in all of that delicious ham we just diced up. At this point, we can turn down the heat and let this cook until the ham and corn are heated through. This next step, like the bacon, is also optional, but I like to add in a cup or 2 of shredded cheddar cheese. Now would be the perfect time to taste test your soup. Add in any additional seasonings like salt and pepper, maybe even a little bit more thyme, whatever you think it might need a little extra of, if any at all. If you cooked up some bacon earlier on, add it to your individual bowls of soup with a sprinkling of cheddar cheese. Here's that ingredients list. And we're back with another copycat recipe. This time it's Panera's broccoli cheddar cheese soup. I'll be using my cast iron Dutch oven, but any trusty soup pot will work as well. It's soup season, everyone. Let's get started. The first thing we're gonna do is turn our carrots into matchsticks like this. As you can see, I've got a nice generous pile here. We need roughly 2 cups worth, and since these are fairly long, we're gonna cut them in half so they're more manageable on the spoon. Next, we need 1 whole white onion, diced. You can use a yellow onion if you prefer a slightly sweeter onion. Both are perfectly fine to use. Go with whichever one you like the most. For our last vegetable, we need 3 to 6 cups of broccoli florets. You can either buy 2 12-ounce frozen bags like this one right here, or you can buy fresh broccoli and cut them down to size yourself. If you're going with the frozen bag of florets, you will come across some rather large pieces like this one here. And what we want for soup is something more manageable like this one here. No big deal. Once your broccoli has had a chance to thaw out, go ahead and chop up the more larger pieces. To a pot on the stove over medium-high heat, we're going to melt half a cup or 1 stick of butter. Once the butter has melted, we're going to add in all of our veggies. We're going to let this cook for about 5 minutes or so until the vegetables have softened up a bit. This might take more or less time depending on how big your vegetable pieces are. Next, we need 1.5 teaspoons of salt, followed by 1 teaspoon of black pepper. Give that a quick mix. This next part is optional. A little heat is a nice addition to the soup, but again, totally optional. Add in a pinch of red pepper flakes. To make our soup nice and thick, we need half a cup of all-purpose flour. Sprinkle it in and mix until you don't see any more white particles. We're gonna let this cook for about 2 minutes before we add in our liquids. This will cook out the raw flour taste, leaving behind a more desirable taste. For our liquids, we need 3 cups of chicken broth, which, let's be honest, is pretty much an entire standard 32-ounce carton. There might be a few tablespoons left in the box, but might as well just add that to the pot. No sense in wasting what's left over. Next goes in 2 cups of heavy cream. Again, we're pretty much going to use the entire 16-ounce carton. More than likely, this is probably the smallest carton size you're going to find in your grocery store's dairy aisle. Followed by 2 cups of milk. I'm using 2% milk here because that's what's in my fridge, but if all you have is whole milk, that'll work too. Give everything a good mix. We're gonna let this heat back up and give it a few minutes. Once it starts to bubble up or lightly boil, we're going to add in 4 cups of shredded cheddar cheese. Today I'm going with a medium cheddar cheese. Also to note, 4 cups is an entire 16-ounce shredded bag of cheddar cheese. I love it when a recipe uses up an entire container, bag, or carton of whatever the product is. That way there's zero waste or stored in the fridge for later use, hoping it'll get used up before it expires. I think the only thing that didn't get used up was the milk and carrots. Honestly, in our house, milk gets consistently depleted, so I have no worries about that. As far as the carrots are concerned, I think my husband is part horse by the way he devours them when I'm not looking. Back to the soup. Turn the heat down and give it a good stir and watch it start to thicken. Now, if the soup is ever too thick for your liking, you can thin it out with a little bit of water or more chicken broth. To be honest though, I think it's perfect just the way it is. Absolutely delicious. Here's an ingredients list. If you like copycat recipes, I've got an Olive Garden copycat you should try. It's a delicious chicken and gnocchi soup. Hands down, it's a family favorite and one I highly recommend. It's still cold outside, which means it's time for yet another soup recipe. Today we're making wonton soup from scratch. A list of ingredients and step-by-step directions are listed down below in the video's description box for your convenience. Let's get started. We're going to start off by prepping all of our produce. We need roughly 1 tablespoon of chopped green onions, also known as scallions. We'll put the rest off to the side in a baggie. Chances are high we're going to end up using it later. Next, we need 2 teaspoons of grated ginger and 2 cloves of garlic, minced. Now we're ready to make the wonton filling. To a bowl, we need 1 tablespoon of our chopped green onions, maybe a little bit more. Be sure to keep whatever's left over. We'll be adding that to the broth later. Next, we need 1 teaspoon of sesame oil, followed by 1 teaspoon of either low sodium soy sauce or 1 teaspoon of tamari soy sauce. Basically, this is the gluten-free version. In my opinion, they both taste the same, so choose whatever you want. We also need half a teaspoon of sugar, 1/8 of a teaspoon of white pepper, which is pretty much just a dash, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and 2 tablespoons of water. Lastly, all we need is half a pound of ground pork. This package has roughly 1.5 pounds, so if we really wanted to go crazy, we could triple the ingredients in the bowl and toss this whole thing in. But we don't have time for that today. This recipe alone makes 36 wontons. Could you imagine if we tripled this recipe? That's a lot of wontons. The good news is, if you decide to make a ton, you can freeze as many as you want and save them for later use. So what you would do is place the raw wontons on a parchment-lined baking sheet in a single layer. Make sure the wontons aren't touching so they don't freeze together. Place the tray in the freezer to freeze the wontons. Once they're frozen, they can be bagged up into freezer bags and stored in the freezer until ready to use. The same can be done with the broth. Make it freeze it. Back to our filling. Once everything looks well incorporated, we're ready to assemble the wontons. For our wrappers, I picked this up from Walmart in their produce section near the dressings and other perishables. If you do decide to triple this recipe, you'll want to pick up 2 of these packages. Simply grab a single sheet and scoop out roughly 1 teaspoon of filling. To seal up the wonton, we're going to run a wet fingertip along all 4 edges of the wrapper. Take the wrapper and gently fold everything in half. With your fingers, we're going to press around the filling, pushing any air pockets out. We don't want to trap any air inside. Once everything looks good, press outward, moving any trapped air out. To get that finished wonton look, gently press your finger in the middle of the filling, making a small indent. This will make it easier for the edges of the wonton wrapper to wrap around the filling. Wet one corner of the wrapper like so and bring in the other side, gently pinching both to seal them together. Ta-da! Your first wonton! As a side note, if you're using the same brand of wonton wrappers as I am, you'll probably run into a few that are slightly stuck together. This is fine, just find the seam and pull them apart. No big deal. Let's make another one. 1 teaspoon of filling in the middle, wet all 4 sides, fold the wrapper in half, push out the air, make that small indent in the center of the filling, bring the corners together, wet one corner and seal together. You might have to force the corners together, just be gentle about it and everything should work out. Repeat this process until you run out of filling. Alright, we're ready for the next step. We're going to set this off to the side while we assemble the broth. To a pot on the stove, we need 6 cups of low sodium chicken broth. If you decide to use straight up regular chicken broth like I am, you'll probably want to refrain from adding any additional salt to the broth. Next, we need 2 teaspoons of that ginger we grated earlier, 2 cloves of minced garlic, 1 tablespoon of low sodium soy sauce or that gluten-free tamari stuff, 2 teaspoons of that toasted sesame oil, and all of the leftover chopped green onions. In my opinion, there's no such thing as too many green onions, so use as many as you want. Give everything a quick stir. We're going to bring this to a boil and then turn down the heat and let it simmer for a few minutes until the flavors of the garlic and the ginger are infused in the broth. Once the broth is simmering, we're ready to cook our wontons. To a boiling pot on the stove, we're going to carefully add in our wontons in a single layer, being sure to stir them so they don't stick to the bottom of the pot. As a side note, if you are using frozen wontons, you don't need to defrost them. The wontons will float to the top when they're done. This usually takes about 1.5 to 2 minutes. If you're worried about the middle not being fully cooked, you can fish one out, slice it open, and have a peek inside. Using a slotted spoon or mini colander, scoop out the wontons and place them in your soup bowls. At this point, your broth should be ready. Simply ladle your broth over your wontons. If you like a lot of broth, I would suggest doubling the broth portion of this recipe. There's probably enough for about 4 bowls of soup this size, so keep that in mind. We didn't even boil all of the wontons today. I stuck about half in the freezer for later. You don't have to do this, but you can add more green onions if you so choose. And I do. Here's an ingredients list. Today we're making chicken and gnocchi soup. This is supposedly an Olive Garden copycat version, although to be absolutely truthful, I haven't had their soup, so I'm not entirely sure just how similar this soup is to theirs. I will say this, the soup is extremely delicious, I loved every bit of it, and will definitely be making it more in the future. To get started, we need 2 cups of cooked chicken. I have 2 chicken breasts, whether that's 2 cups or not, I'm gonna use all of it. Just discard any bits you don't want, then chop up your chicken into bite-sized pieces. If you'd rather not deal with raw chicken, a rotisserie chicken from the grocery store works well too. Just shred it and set it aside until it's needed. Using this nice big beautiful Dutch oven my mother gave me recently, we're going to add in some olive oil and 2 pads of butter. I've got the stove on medium-high heat. Add the chicken in a single layer on the bottom of the pot. We're going to season the top with a few sprinklings of black pepper and garlic salt. This is the garlic salt I'm using. We're going to let our chicken cook, flipping it around every so often. This should only take about 5 minutes or so. Once the chicken looks ready, we're going to take it out so we can start sauteing our veggies. Speaking of veggies, we need half a cup of carrots, julienned. Now, I've never julienned anything, so I ran to Google. I love saying Google. To see what the internet had to say. Basically, I want to turn my carrots into matchsticks. Oh boy. Obviously, these aren't perfect. They could stand to be a bit thinner and more uniform, but I'm not running a fancy restaurant here. Nobody in my house is gonna mind. Next, we need 1 stick of celery, diced. Who uses 1 stick of celery in soup? I'm gonna go all out with 2 sticks. We also need 1 small yellow onion, also diced into small pieces. Oh, by the way, I will have an ingredients list towards the end of this video, so no need to write anything down. It's also posted with directions down in the description box below. To the same pot we cooked our chicken in, we're going to add in 4 tablespoons of butter, with the stove on medium-high heat. Once the butter has mostly melted, add in all the veggies. We're going to let this cook for about 5 minutes, stirring every so often. Okay, this looks really good. And while you weren't looking, I diced up 5 small garlic cloves. The recipe calls for only 2, but these were really small cloves. I mean really small cloves. We're gonna let the garlic cook for about a minute or so. The garlic is going to cook really quickly, so keep an eye on it. After about a minute, add in 1/4 of a cup of all-purpose flour. This is what's going to make our soup nice and thick. We're going to stir it around until we don't see any more flour. It's going to take about a minute or 2 to cook the raw taste out of the flour, so don't add any liquids just yet. Okay, we're ready. The soup calls for 4 cups of chicken broth and 2 cups of half and half, but we don't want to add that all in right away. If we do, the chances are high we're going to break our roux. I added in 1 cup at a time, then stirred it in before adding in the next cup. Do this and your soup will thank you. If you're worried and think you might have messed up and your soup isn't thickening at all, you can take out half a cup of the warm liquid, add in 1 tablespoon of cornstarch, mix it in really good until there are no more lumps, and then just add it back to the pot. It'll take about a minute or 2, but the soup should start to thicken up. With that being said, assuming you won't have to actually do that, by the time we do add in our last cup of liquids, you might think the soup is way too thin. Don't worry, it just needs some time to come to a simmer. It is going to thicken up. Next goes in 1 teaspoon of dried thyme. I'm using a half teaspoon measure here, that's why you see me adding it in twice. Followed by half a teaspoon of ground mustard. Go ahead and mix that in. Add in the chicken we cooked earlier, or the shredded rotisserie chicken if you went that route. Next, add in a sprinkling of black pepper and a pinch or 2 of salt. Next, we need 16 ounces of gnocchi. This is the brand I'm using. It's a Walmart brand. This is a 17-ounce container. No point in not using the whole thing. 1 extra ounce isn't going to break this soup. We're going to add the gnocchi and let it simmer for about 5 minutes. Although the recipe does say to refer to the directions on the back of whatever gnocchi package you purchased, this one says they cook in under 2 minutes. That's fine. Now, normally I don't add in red pepper flakes to anything, but the recipe says it's only asking for a pinch, so I'm going to do it. Just this once. I want to see what it does for heat. Lastly, we need 1 cup of spinach. Now, I love spinach, so naturally I'm going to add in a little bit more than 1 cup. We're going to let this simmer until the spinach has wilted, which isn't going to take much time, and we're done. I've got to say, this is phenomenal. What a home run. It was so delicious. The red pepper flakes gave the soup a nice warmth, definitely not overpowering heat like I was worried about. The perfect amount of veggies, the chicken and the gnocchi were great. I loved every bit. Very delicious stuff. We'll make it again for sure. Here's that ingredients list I promised you. Today we're making a lasagna-inspired soup, and it's got everything we love about lasagna. Tender noodles, hearty meat, and lots of melty cheese. And all of it is incredibly easy to whip up. To get started, we're going to dice up 1 large white onion. Also to note, you can find a list of ingredients and directions posted down below in this video's description box for your convenience. We also need about 4 garlic cloves, minced. And just like that, we're done chopping. Everything else is just going to get dumped right into the pot, which I love. To a large pot on the stove over medium-high heat, we're going to toss in 2 tablespoons of butter. We're going to give this a minute to melt down, and then we're going to add in our diced onions. Okay, I can't wait any longer. Let's go. We're going to let this cook for about 2 to 3 minutes, stirring every so often so nothing burns. Then we're going to toss in our garlic, which won't take long to cook, about a minute or 2. Okay, it's time to add in the ground beef. We're going to use about 1 pound of this stuff. We're just going to break up the ground beef into smaller bite-sized pieces. While that continues to cook, we're going to add in 1 tablespoon of Italian seasoning, 1 teaspoon of salt. I'm using pink Himalayan salt, but regular salt works too, along with 1 teaspoon of black pepper, and give everything a quick mix. Next goes in 1 15-ounce can of diced tomatoes, juices and all, 1 15-ounce can of tomato sauce, and 3 ounces of tomato paste. We're going to give this a quick mix and then add in our broth. In goes 4 cups of chicken broth, which is pretty much the entire standard size container of chicken broth. Lastly, all we need is an 8-ounce box of bow tie pasta. Do you have to use bow tie pasta? No. You can use actual lasagna noodles if you want, just break them up into manageable bite-sized pieces and toss them in. I picked the bow tie pasta because it looks fun. It's got the ruffly edges, similar to lasagna noodles, and it's already the perfect size. Okay, we're gonna crank up the heat to high and bring the soup to a boil. Then once it's done boiling, we're gonna cover the pot, reduce the heat to a medium simmer, and cook for 10 to 15 minutes, or until the pasta has been cooked to your liking. At this point, you can add in 1 to 2 cups of water or broth in small amounts to adjust the consistency if you want. I chose not to. Alright, we're ready to eat. Let's go add on a few extra toppings. To the bowl, I'm just going to top this with a little bit of shredded mozzarella cheese, a sprinkling of Parmesan cheese, a big spoonful of ricotta cheese, and to top it all off, a little bit of fresh parsley. How delicious does that look? I also made and filmed this video at my mom's house, so that was nice. We ate an incredible lunch of homemade soup together. Good times. Here's an ingredients list. We're making this delicious baked potato soup. This soup is packed full of incredible flavors, easy to find ingredients, and to thicken it up so it's nice and creamy, we're gonna make a simple roux. To get started, we need 2 big carrots chopped. I have these slightly smaller carrots, the last remaining carrots from my big bag of carrots. You don't have to peel your carrots, I'm mostly removing just the questionable spots. How big you make your carrot pieces or any of your vegetable pieces is entirely up to you. I prefer my pieces on the smaller side. For the celery, we need 2 ribs of celery, also chopped. Again, these seem a little smaller than normal, so I snuck in an extra rib for good measure. Go ahead and chop them up however big or small you want, although try to keep them as close to the same size as the carrots so they cook evenly. This is a rather large onion. The recipe calls for half a medium yellow onion diced. I love onions, and if this was a medium-sized onion, I would have used the whole thing, but it is rather large, so I'll save the other half for something else. We're gonna set this off to the side and get cracking on our bacon. The recipe calls for 4 thick slices of bacon chopped. Well, I don't have any thick cut bacon on hand, and honestly any kind, your favorite kind, will work. How much you want is entirely up to you. This bacon isn't getting tossed in the soup as an ingredient, but rather just as a topping. And since it wants to be chopped, instead of cooking it in strips and then chopping it up later, I'm just gonna get it all out of the way and do the chopping now. These pieces do look big right now, but it is bacon. They'll shrink up during the cooking process. Okay, I think we're ready to start cooking. To a pot on the stove, or in my case I have this big beautiful Dutch oven my mama gave me. We're gonna add in our bacon over medium-high heat and let that cook for about 4 to 5 minutes or until crispy. Grab a slotted spoon and fish out the pieces. Don't drain off the fat, we're going to use that to cook our veggies. Once all of your bacon is out of the pot, add in the onions, carrots, and celery. We're going to lower the temp just a little bit from the medium-high heat we had it set to. We don't need it that hot. We're going to let this cook for about 5 minutes, stirring every so often so nothing burns. While that's on the stove, we're going to dice up roughly 2 pounds of russet or golden potatoes. I'm using russet, and as you can see here, my potatoes have already been washed and peeled. Peeling is entirely up to you. I don't care much for potato skins in my soup, but I don't mind them in my mashed potatoes. Also to note, the 2 pounds of potatoes is mostly a guideline. Just eyeball it, no need to bust out your scale. Once all of your potatoes are chopped up into bite-sized pieces and ready to go, set that off to the side. We need to check on our veggies. And it looks like everything's coming along nicely. The carrots don't look as crunchy, and the onions and celery have softened up a bit. It's about time to add in some raw garlic and all of our herbs and spices. Just like with onions, I love garlic, so I am adding in a bit more. Also, I mostly roughly chopped my garlic. Definitely didn't mince it. There's nothing wrong with mincing it, I just didn't bother with it. We're gonna stir it in and let it cook for about a minute or 2, making sure it doesn't burn. After about a minute or so, we're gonna add in 1.5 teaspoons of salt, 1 teaspoon of dried parsley, half a teaspoon of dried dill, half a teaspoon of dried thyme, and 1/4 of a teaspoon of black pepper. Give that a quick stir. Now we're ready for the potatoes and the chicken broth. Dump in all of the potatoes, followed by 3 cups of chicken broth. I did end up tossing in the remaining broth from the container as there was hardly any left in the box. No point in leaving it out, it's just one less thing to store in the fridge. We're going to bring this to a simmer over medium-high heat. Look, little bubbles. Perfect. Then drop it down to medium-low and cover it with a lid. We're going to leave this alone and let it cook until the potatoes are tender, about 10 minutes. While that's cooking, let's make a roux. This is what will thicken our soup. We need 1/4 of a cup of melted butter over medium-high heat. Any small pot or saucepan will work. To our butter, we're going to add in 3 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. Grab a whisk and mix the flour in until you don't have any more lumps. Before we add any liquids, we're going to let the raw flour taste cook out. This should only take about a minute or 2. A little neat trick to know when it's ready is also by the smell. You kind of have to lean in close, so be careful, but basically once it's ready, your mixture should smell similar similar to a warm pie dough. At least that's what I've always noticed when making a roux. Next goes in 1.5 cups of milk. Try not to add it in all at once, we don't want to break our roux. Toss in a cup, give it a chance to thicken up before adding in the remaining half cup. We're going to let this thicken up, which should just take a few minutes. Now normally I would say if you're going to add in cheese to soup, shred it from a block so it melts better. Shredded cheese will melt, it'll just take a little bit longer because it's covered in stuff to keep it from clumping up in the bag. We need 1 heaping cup of shredded cheddar cheese. I eyeballed it and I also used a Fiesta blend rather than straight cheddar cheese. Use what you have on hand. Let's check in with our soup. It's been 10 minutes and so far our soup smells amazing. Now it's time to check on the potatoes. Grab a spoon, fish out a potato chunk, and grab a fork. And if the fork goes in smoothly, your potatoes are ready. If your potato chunks are rather large in size, they might need a couple more minutes. But this looks good, let's continue. Grab your cheesy roux mixture and dump it all in. Give it a good mix and let it continue to cook for about 3 to 4 minutes. This next part is totally optional, but I like to add in a splash of heavy cream. I feel like this just makes it taste richer and creamier. I'd say my splash is about 1/4 cup if you're wondering. This too is optional, but since it is potato soup, I'm going to mash up some of the potatoes, not all, just some. And here we go. This looks perfect. Here's an ingredients list. Be sure to add on that delicious bacon we cooked up earlier. There should be enough for several bowls of soup as we did cook up a fair bit. I've also added on some cheddar cheese and a few slices of green onions, all totally optional. It's still pretty cold where I live. We just had Christmas, so this is the perfect meal for this time of year. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out, and I'll see you all in the next video.